Welcome back to Bonchon Warrior, where we live wonderfully and bring our best. This is Ian Schneider, your host, and today, let's resume our previously interrupted programming. On the flip side, the trainees that were acting as learners in this demonstration, I wanted them to have the experience of actually doing an activity so that they can ask themselves similar questions. For example, what part of this activity was difficult? For very high-level English-speaking Korean teachers, if an activity is difficult for them, it will undoubtedly be 10 times more difficult for their students. So I wanted them in that immersive experience in order to be able to absorb that kind of lesson rather than just talking about things theoretically and hypothetically, as would be the case in which we simply exchanged and swap-shopped different activity ideas. So one of the best lessons I've learned as an instructor here is that with the Korean English teachers, because they're adults, because they're very high level, the hierarchy is a lot less the same. I don't feel as much of a pressure to always be right and to always project strength. I feel like it's been very helpful for me to honestly communicate when I think I miscommunicated the goal of a given assignment and when I think that my vision for the assignment and the results the trainees produced might not match up, and how I'm working on things and how I can do better in the future. So after the speaking activity demonstration, the trainees were a little bit worn out, and I just said, look, that was my fault. I should have been more clear on the goals of the activity. So for example, perhaps having them including teaching objectives or teaching the core vocabulary or providing some kind of a wrap-up at the end of the activity was really not necessary and just an excessive burden on them. So instead, when I really envision the activity, it's merely starting with the instruction, okay class, let's do an activity, and then proceeding to instruct the activity, model the activity, and do the activity, finished. As this program runs to a close, I feel very sad that they all have to leave, but I also feel very inspired. A new program will start in March, and I have so many ideas that I want to flesh out and explore as I prepare my curriculum moving forward. For example, perhaps I could implement a more flipped classroom strategy in which I use programs like Screencaster, and I can record my voice in order to give my lecture materials outside of class. They can study that, and then I can give them a question or a prompt, and they would have to send me an audio message sharing their thoughts and opinions of a particular discussion question. Then, when they come in for actual class time, we can really dig in and focus on discussing the current concepts and preparing for any kind of assessment or homework activity inside of class, so hopefully to reduce their workload outside of class. Moreover, as I continue to consider the assessments I want to give them moving forward, I think it would be ideal to speak to all of my fellow instructors and create a comprehensive master list of all of the assessments that the trainees will receive throughout the course of the program. I think that will do two things. Number one, it will give me an idea about what other projects that the trainees will work on in other classes, which will hopefully give me ideas of how I can take something they create in one class and adapt it as an assessment in my class. Therefore, the trainees don't have to feel like they're starting from scratch. When I give them an assignment, they can merely adapt material from a previous assignment and use it in their next class. For example, I've been researching a methodology called Tpr Storytelling. It was pioneered by Blaine Ray, and he's a Spanish teacher, as well as some other researchers who have done actual studies. This involves a series of repetition and questioning and storytelling in order to provide students comprehensible input in line with Krashen's input hypothesis, in order to help develop students' listening and speaking fluency abilities. I like this method because I think it can be very flexible to teachers who have to teach from a prescribed textbook, I think that they could adapt stories that incorporate the required vocabulary or language structures that they have to teach. And I think that it's a great way to get students more engaged, because part of TPRS is to ask for students' own input. So you could ask a story in which two students are two of the main characters, or which one student has to play basketball with LeBron James and the student wins. There's a lot of crazy things that you can do in order to keep students' interest and to engage their listening and speaking faculties. So when I consider doing a demonstration assessment of this method, which I will teach to them and then have them perform as an assessment, I might ask them to take a short story that they write in their writing course and adapt that for a TPR storytelling demonstration. As a result, they are not having to start from scratch to create a story. They already have a story. They simply have to adapt that previous project into a new methodological context. It adds more synchrony to the curriculum, and it makes them feel a lot less burdened in terms of their workload. So as I look back, there's a lot of things I would do differently. There's a lot of things I did well. And that's one reason I really embrace working here at JIAI. I'm really stretching my abilities as an educator, and I'm really forced to take my professional development seriously, and I'm really forced to reflect in my educational philosophy so that I can deliver the best possible teacher training product that I can. I'm sure I'll share more about all of these topics in the coming months, but that's all the time I have for now. So I just hope that everyone's having a good February, staying warm. Hope you're all having some lovely vacations as we continue to wind up towards the next school year. And this is Ian Schneider at Bonchon Warrior, wishing everybody to live wonderfully and always bring your best.